everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello, my name is Grace, and I am so excited that this is going to be my first requested video. So today I'm going to be talking about how to set up your Google Calendar to make it work for you. Just as a tiny bit of backstory, I was diagnosed with ADHD earlier this year. I've just been trying to find tools for myself to organize my life better and stay on track and kind of get less distracted or forgetful of things. So, I mean, I've generally been writing everything down and putting it all in a calendar or a bullet journal or whatever for a long time, but after watching a couple of different calendar organizing videos and stuff, I've kind of come up with my own system that works really well. A lot of this is based off of Jules Acree's vision of calendar, so huge shout out to her. So if you find yourself struggling with time management or organization, then this is definitely the video for you. And yeah, let's get started. So here is my beautiful calendar. I'm just gonna do December so that we have like a fresh blank, well, not really that blank for me, but blank slate to start with. And I know that this might look slightly overwhelming to some people, but I promise there's a method to the madness. So let's just dive right into it. I would say step number one is create color-coded sections or calendars for yourself to use. Honestly, almost every facet of my life has a different calendar and therefore a different color to use. So every single thing has a different situation going on. So my advice would be to use hex colors that kind of match your vibe or like the aesthetic that you're going for. If you want like light pastels, then that's fine. If you want like more natural, neutral earthy colors, kind of like what I'm going for, then that's fine too. Just something that makes you feel good and not overwhelmed when you look at it, because sometimes the really aggressive like bright yellow, red, blue of the Google stuff is like really intense to look at. So in terms of figuring out what colors work best, definitely go for maybe like looking up a color scheme hex code sheet on Pinterest or Google Image or whatever is a good place to start. But then after that, figuring out like the intensity of the color. This is something that is a little bit more specific that has definitely helped me. I suggest using colors that are slightly desaturated for things that happen all the time, like work, for example. Because this happens several days a week. It is happening all the time. It's constantly on your calendar. For example, if you are setting up a week, this is kind of like what you see on your phone if you're just kind of glancing at it. This is something that occurs all the time. So having something that is not so aggressive in color is going to be much nicer to look at than say like a bright red thing that is just like blaring you in the face all the time. And if it happens all the time, chances are you basically already know about it, but you're like, okay, it's in the calendar because it's happening in my life, but it's not like drawing all my attention. So on the other hand, if you have something like a reminder like this, I got 2 reminders that happen every month on the 1st, and it is in a brighter pink color, so it grabs my attention more and I'm more likely to look at it and remember it because it's in a brighter color. So the stuff that you want to have as a more saturated color would probably be reminders, deadlines, and birthdays, essentially. So your eye is drawn to it. See how everything else is kind of like a neutral color, and then the birthdays are like pink and the reminders are like an even brighter pink. So something that you can kind of like see and your eye is drawn to it more. I would say kind of like the middle tone colors in terms of saturation would definitely be the extra things like self-care, workouts, like travel, hobbies, stuff like that. Or depending on how often your hobbies occur, I don't know if they happen all the time, maybe desaturated a little bit. Like I don't travel for my job or anything, obviously, so it's not like travel needs to be a bland color, but I travel enough that it's like a medium color for me. So obviously I have a huge trip to New Zealand in December, and honestly, without this calendar, my life would be in shambles and this whole trip would have never happened. So I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. So again, to recap, in terms of colors, Pick a color scheme that you like. Do the things that happen all the time as a slightly desaturated color. Do the things that happen a moderate amount of the time in like a medium saturated color, and the stuff that happens very rarely that's more important as a more saturated color. You can always change this in your little like hex rings. So let me just dive right into how to add calendars if you're like super new to Google Calendar. Obviously I have a calendar event sort of color thing for every single aspect of my life essentially, but I haven't added one for my dog yet. So I'm going to create a new calendar. I'm gonna name it Flip because that is my dog's name. And I'm going to create the calendar. So if you come to here, obviously the new calendar shows up and you can do some options. If you click on this plus at the bottom of the color kind of situation, then you can add in the hex code that you have found and figured out. And again, if you need to lighten it or darken it up, you just add it a little bit closer or farther away from whatever original color you had. I kind of liked the original color, so I'll just kind of leave it in that area. But anyways, if you want to do other editing of the calendar, then you just go to settings and sharing, and essentially you can do some more editing or finagling with stuff. So event notifications, I would say for stuff that is important, I would change your notifications to remind you of something. So for example, my holidays, birthdays, and like anniversaries stuff, event notifications, every time that you make an event on this calendar, you will get the same notification. So I want to do every time that someone has a birthday, I want a notification one day before their birthday so that I can remember, oh, the next day it's their birthday. So make sure that you like send them a nice message or something. So that sort of thing, it's pretty straightforward, but it's definitely a nice little way to remind yourself of things that are going on. It's definitely a nice little way to remind yourself of things that are going on and make sure that you don't forget things if you tend to forget, like me sometimes. Tip number 2 would be to time block or add reminders as events and tasks and everything, and kind of just add them in accordingly. In general, I would say no thing is too small to put in your Google Calendar. Like everything that pops up into your head, put it in your Google Calendar. The instant that it occurs, the next thing that you do immediately is put it in your Google Calendar, or else, especially if you have ADHD, you will forget. So let me show you how I kind of do it and my system for it. So obviously I have kind of like a recurring reminder at the beginning of every month. So on the first day of the month, I need to give my dog HeartGuard Plus, and I also have to pay rent, obviously. So I just have recurring reminders, and it's really helpful to have something that you can physically, or yeah, you know, physically even tap it, check it off. So yeah, and you would think, oh, Grace, well, if you have to do it every single month on the first, wouldn't you just remember? No, because especially with ADHD, there is a severe amount of time blindness. I would just add reminders of things, especially if they're recurring, or if you just have to remind yourself to do something. Just add it as a reminder, because then it'll show up, it'll notify you, it'll show up as like a notification on your phone, and you will be able to remember to do something. And then if it's just like a random task that you have to do, like a specific task that you have to do during the day, for example, then I would say just add it in as a task. I've used the task feature on Google to either put something on my calendar for me to do and check off, or as kind of like a post-it note sort of thing. So in this situation, it's kind of like a post-it note, because it's one of those things that like it kind of spans multiple days, whatever, time zones, all this stuff. It's kind of confusing. So I just put it up as a little task, but it's kind of just like a post-it note to remember what time my flight leaves, what time it lands, what's the confirmation number. Obviously that's blurred out because I don't want you guys stealing my flights. But anyways, these are kind of like little post-it notes, and then we have a couple of things that we're planning to do in New Zealand, and flights that are happening like inside the country, not moving over different time zones. I'm just adding in on my travel calendar, so it's the same color as everything else, and it's just like in the time frame that we are going to be up in the air, and you know, then I know, oh, this event starts at 1 p.m., so that means my flight leaves at 1 p.m. just for that like situation. And obviously it's not actually 1 p.m. because there's a huge time difference, and I put it all in the calendar as New Zealand time. So that's something to note if you are traveling and doing this. Make sure it's in the correct time zone because, ooh boy, that would really mess me up. Anyways, so those are essentially the like 2 main tips that I have. Color code everything and put everything in your calendar. So for me, the system that has worked best is just adding in every event that is happening in my life the second that I realize that it's happening, and making sure that everything is color coded and labeled so that nothing kind of falls in between the cracks essentially. So kind of figuring out what works best for you is definitely what is going to work best for you. This took quite a little bit of trial and error, and hopefully my explanation was good enough. Honestly, every time that I try to sit down and film this video, my brain is just like this is the 3rd time that I've tried to film this video, and I really hope that it makes sense. So if you have any more questions about this, please let me know down in the comments, and I would love to answer them. If this was a horrible video and you're like, that made literally no sense, this was a piece of garbage, please refilm it, then I will try to refilm it in the next month or 2. But as you can see, I'm going to be in New Zealand for 3 weeks, so I have to film a lot of content before I leave, and I've been really stressed and trying to do that for you guys. We're gonna make it all happen. I will see you guys in the next one, and until then, I am sending you all my love. Goodbye.